So, as the college season is winding down, we're getting closer and closer to early signing day, which means recruiting moves are on the way and we're about to start seeing some shakeup. One such shakeup happened this weekend as former Florida Gators commit Isaiah Bond decommitted from the Gators less than 24 hours after Dan Mullen was fired. And interestingly enough, on the same weekend, he visited the Alabama Crimson Tide. And we need to talk about what this means as well as other recruiting battles for the Crimson Tide. Before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe this is a great signal for the Crimson Tide that they are in a prime position for Isaiah Bond? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification because I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoy this content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions, though they may seem small, are really massive to content creators such as myself in both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But with all that being said, let's talk about this. And first and foremost, I want to start with Isaiah Bond, an individual who the Tide staff was very high on throughout the entirety of this recruiting process. Ultimately, Bond chose to go to the University of Florida, or at least chose to commit to the University of Florida. Now, Isaiah Bond is currently the #1 athlete in the nation per 24/7 Sports and hails from Georgia. So this past weekend, when the news comes down that Dan Mullen is out at Florida, instantly my first thought was the exact same thought I had when the Clay Helton news came down. What's going to happen with the recruiting class? And we instantly saw the results from Clay Helton's firing at USC. Michael Williams decommits very soon thereafter, and now we see Damani Jackson decommitting from the Trojans, and that recruiting battle is squarely up in the air, one that we are going to hit on briefly in this same video. But refocusing back on Isaiah Bond, the interesting thing about Bond is he also decommitted on the same weekend he visited the Crimson Tide. And I think that is great news for the Crimson Tide because I am not sitting here with the position that the only reason he decommitted from Florida was the visit to Alabama. I think it was the perfect storm. Whenever you have a visit that goes well and then the head coach of where you're currently committed gets fired, that's the type of perfect storm I'm talking about. That's the type of situation that will create a very precarious situation that has an individual rethinking. And the good news for the Crimson Tide is Isaiah Bond looks to project to the next level as a wide receiver, and this young man has unbelievable speed. In fact, if the Tide were able to land, he and Kobe Prentice, the other wide receiver they have in this class, they would have a lot of speed in this wide receiver class. It goes even further, though, when just a few days ago we were talking about Evan Stewart, another individual who was high on the Tide, who ended up visiting the Crimson Tide. Evan Stewart being the #1 wide receiver in the nation, a top 10 player in the nation universally. Across recruiting services, he is special out the Lone Star State. Now, the interesting thing is with Evan Stewart is just a few days after it was announced that he was going to be visiting the Alabama Crimson Tide, he came out and said he's really looking at 3 schools right now. Texas, where he was committed before, Texas A&M, who is doing incredible work on the recruiting trail right now. We need to realize what A&M is doing. They are a threat. They need to be watched because they are in a lot of heated battles and they're doing well. And then finally, the Alabama Crimson Tide. And Alabama fans need to be really excited about this because this was a prospect who I think a lot of Alabama fans wanted but didn't really know if we'd actually be able to get him into this class. So, as National Signing Day is approaching and early National Signing Day is just right around the corner, hearing that a talented wide receiver such as Evan Stewart has Alabama in his group of 3 that he's really looking at right now is great for the Crimson Tide, especially when you look at what the Tide offers. But now that we've talked about these wide receivers, let's get into some of the other recruits that we need to hit on. I said earlier in the video about Damani Jackson, and he's an individual I think the Tide are going to massively prioritize right now, especially with the battle for Denver Harris being up in the air, although the Crimson Tide still look to be in a fantastic spot for Denver Harris. It's just that's a battle that we always knew was going to kind of come down to the wire. But Damani Jackson is an individual that if the Tide could flip, they would be incredibly happy. And a big portion of that is what the Tide have right now on roster relative to what they're going to be recruiting. And right now, the defensive back position is one that they really need to recruit, specifically the safety position. Now, unfortunately for the Crimson Tide, the safety position is one they haven't had the luck on this year. And it makes me wonder if an individual already on campus, such as Terrion Arnold, the 5-star out of last year's class who came to the Crimson Crimson Tide as a safety out of high school, but is so talented. He can genuinely play corner or safety at the next level at the highest possible caliber. This young man has ability for days, and it makes me wonder if the Crimson Tide has success in this class getting cornerbacks, if they would move Terrion Arnold to the safety position because he has the ability to do so. No, at the end of the day, if he wants to play a cornerback, he should be able to play what he likes, and the coaches see him every day. So if they think he's best suited for the corner position, that's their decision. They get to see him every day. I'm just looking at it from the little bit of film I've been able to see of him when he was in high school, and it was very apparent to me that he has the athletic ability to do either. So that really makes me wonder that if the Crimson Tide are able to get in the guys that they would like at the cornerback position, if they might move a Terrion Arnold back to the safety position, because he has that ability. Outside of those defensive backs, the Tide had other visitors this weekend from the class of 2023, whether that was Mateo Uungalele, the 5-star edge rusher, Richard Young, a 5-star running back, who the Crimson Tide are going to absolutely look to prioritize in his class. We talked about him a while ago when he got the Alabama offer. He said it was his dream school, the school he's always thought about going to. And the Crimson Tide has been synonymous with running back success. They've pumped them into the NFL, and I think that the Crimson Tide are in a good position here, but that is a long battle to go. And even though the Crimson Tide are great with the running back position, there's a lot of places that pump out fantastic running backs, and Richard Young is a unique talent. Every institution in the nation is going to want him, but they also had a 5-star quarterback on campus. So, as National Signing Day approaches, and as early National Signing Day is right around the corner, these are the battles we're going to have to watch out for, because these are the battles that are going to be hyper impactful. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.